I'm gonna try something new. Usually I shoot on Canon or Sony cameras, but today I've got the Panasonic GH6. And I've never even shot a Micro Four Thirds camera before, so these are gonna be my impressions coming into it completely fresh. This video is sponsored by Professional Photographers of America. Join a community of over 33,000 photographers and find equipment, insurance, education, and business tools made specifically for small business owners like you. So starting with the body, it's bigger than I imagined, considering it's got a smaller sensor inside, but it feels great in the hand. They've really thought about the placements of the buttons and the grip, and just the way it's designed overall has been awesome. And by the way, I'm only really interested in the video performance of this. I didn't even test the photography stuff, which I know it can do, but for me, this is a video camera. So what I love about it is they put record buttons all over it. When you're in video mode, the red button on the top, the shutter button in the front, and another red button on the very front of it, all will start recording. I actually found that I kept accidentally starting to record, and I don't really know why. I think I was hitting the front button when I didn't mean to. I gotta give this camera top marks for usability. Wearing gloves all day, which I do a lot in Canada in the winter, I can still use it, no problem. Especially like this front record button. But all the buttons are well thought out. They feel good and chunky when you press them, and they're clearly labeled. So one thing that drives me crazy about Sony cameras is you kind of need to customize them a lot to really make them usable. Out of the box, the configuration for video isn't great. Whereas Canon, for example, all the labels are clear and you just use the camera more or less the way that it's set up. We've got the same thing going on with the GH6. All of these default button configurations work well for me. I know what they do and I don't feel a big need to re-customize them. Of course, you can reassign them in many different ways, and I'm sure you'll find one or two that work differently for you. There's also a custom function menu where you can add all of your most commonly used menu items, and a quick menu, which was very helpful for me. And on top of the camera, you've got up to 4 different custom presets that you can save. So for example, one of them I have set to Anamorphic, another one to slow motion, whatever it is that fits your need. It's got 2 memory card slots in a configuration that I think is great, with a CF Express card for your higher frame rates and an SD card. So I have a ton of SD cards sitting around that I want to keep using. I really like the format, and I appreciate that I can use them for most things. I only really need the CF Express Type B cards if I'm recording at the extremely high frame rates and high resolutions, but you can get away with most things on the SD card. And of course, you can assign the use of the cards in different ways, like it fills one up and then the other, or you can record backups or photos to one, videos to the other, all sorts of options. Panasonic has also reset my standard in terms of flip out screens. So hey, look, I can flip this out just like you'd expect. But very importantly, it also just flips up so that you can operate the camera for video if you're shooting horizontally and just look down at it like this. This has always been a compromise when I'm using regular flip screens, because when I'm looking down like this, I'm off axis to the camera. I've complained about this on the podcast before. You've all heard me rant about it. It's way better if the screen is right behind your lens so that you are all in alignment. Panasonic gets this right better than anyone else. All right, I know the world doesn't vlog very much anymore, but something I've complained about many times is it's weird that no camera has really completely gone after the vlogging market, and I feel like this might be the best one yet. I mean, it's got the flippy screen we love, it's got a record button on the front, and a tally light, it's got stabilization. I mean, these are really like all the things that you would want if you're just running and gunning, going around and shooting what's in front of you. And of course, for this kind of shot, you have everything a little more easily in focus because you got that smaller Micro Four Thirds sensor. So yeah, benefit or not, depending on what you're going for. By the way, I haven't had any neutral density filters with me yet, so everything, I'm just basically cranking up the shutter speed, so that's what you're seeing a lot of the time. One thing I actually love about this small sensor, and a reason I'd think about getting the GH6 for myself, is it has less shallow depth of field. More is in focus in the background. And now you might be looking at my shot right now and see how blurry this is and say like, well, why would you want that? Obviously, I'm addicted to bokeh, so it's strange that I'd be excited to have one camera that has a very sharp background. This all ties into a bigger idea about the GH6, and maybe the main theme I took away from it is that this is the best possible professional social media creating camera. That sounds kind of niche, but it's something we do all the time. Like, we're hired by clients to make commercial videos that are going to appear on Instagram or TikTok or wherever, and that has some specific needs. And one of them is often that it looks like it was shot on a phone. So a lot of the time we are shooting that on our iPhones because it's really easy to, but it doesn't always have the same image quality or the same level of control that you can get with a camera like the GH6. But what I've really fallen in love with is having a almost square sensor. I don't want to go back to my 16:9 video ratios of my Canon cameras when I could have open gate 4:3 video. It is superior in every way, and I'll explain why if it's not totally obvious. So if you look down at my feet with me, you'll see some of the many quality options we have here. So starting out, we're at 422 10-bit 4K footage, 24 frames per second right now, but there's a lot of different options there. That's kind of what I'm used to on other cameras. But what I can crank it up to here, if I just keep going past the 4K, all of a sudden we get into some bigger resolutions. There's 4.4K, best of all 5.8K. And now you can see this is basically a square frame. So when we're shooting a video and it needs to be for social media and for YouTube and for TV and it's going to be put everywhere, shooting in a square format is so helpful. And Panasonic was thoughtful enough to add a bunch of different frame markers that you can work with. So for example, we can say, what does it look like in 16:9? Then when I'm recording, I get these nice boxes around my frame so I can see what a 16:9 image will be, but it's still capturing a taller aspect ratio. I can also switch that over to 9:16, AKA vertical video. And now I can see exactly what a center cutout looks like so I can tell how this is going to appear. If you've ever tried to turn horizontal footage into vertical, you can realize how much quality you're throwing away when you take 16:9 and make that 9:16. But with this square aspect ratio, you're not throwing away information. So it is much sharper when you use just that vertical cutout rather than the cropped readout I'm getting from, let's say, a Canon R5. So please, Canon, Sony, you're using 2:3 aspect ratio full frame sensors. Let me use all of the 2:3. Why are you cropping the top and bottom off to make it 16:9? Let me shoot open gate on every single camera like Panasonic does. I really appreciate this feature. Anyway, I'll move on because I know not everybody cares about it as much as I do, but I'll keep bringing this up until it happens. And now I want to tell you about a service that can help sharpen your skills and build up your business. It's our sponsor today, PPA, the Professional Photographers of America. Members enjoy a ton of benefits, including $15,000 of equipment insurance. They also have data recovery services, so you don't have to sweat losing those once-in-a-lifetime photos. And one that every freelancer could use, PPA offers customizable contracts, so you can have professional proposals, cancellation letters, model releases, and copyright transfers, all tailored for your business. So click the link in the description below, get a special discount on membership, and find out how PPA can help take your photography business to the next level. Another exciting but niche addition to the camera is the ability to shoot internal ProRes. I wish every camera could do this. It's such a great feature because ProRes is really smooth to work with, especially on a Mac. So bravo to Panasonic, this is great, but I just want you to keep in mind that you don't necessarily need to be using it. I think that ProRes is really a professional feature. There isn't a quality gain. So if you're shooting on Panasonic's internal H.265 long GOP codec, it looks great. It's so usable. Like, it's really amazing to work with, and you don't lose any quality using that smaller compression rather than ProRes. Now color, always keep in mind that the word color science really just means like this is the default output that you're getting out of your camera. You can manipulate a lot of these images to look different ways, but I'm a snob when it comes to good looking color, and it's challenging to get really nice color out of, let's say, a Sony. I never really found transform LUTs or methods that got me to exactly where I wanted to be, and I found it easier to do that with Canon. Now Panasonic has been great to work with. So let's say you're shooting a log, which I am. I should actually let you know, most of these tests, I shoot log all the time, so that's what I'll talk about a lot. If you're looking for transform LUTs from Canon and Sony, their provided manufacturer ones are pretty bad. Like, I just don't like the way they look at all, so that's why I made my own. But with the Panasonic, they provide their own LUTs that look great. They look really clean and very natural, and everything looks beautiful right out of the box. They do the best job out of those three brands. By the way, I was just browsing through my channel and happened to notice this is like my 20th camera review. If you want more of them, you should probably subscribe. I mean, maybe you've watched them all, but you forgot to subscribe, so now's a good time. Just click that button, I'd appreciate it. But if there's one thing that I'm more snobby about than color, it's dynamic range, and the GH6 has done some interesting things here. Its approach is kind of similar to the DGO sensor that we've seen from Canon. It's also the way that Alexa does things, where it's combining different exposures and different sensitivities to create a wider dynamic range image, and they call it DR Boost. So these dynamic range tests are some of the most important to me. Right now on this one, we've got Vlog shot at ISO 2000. This is exposed more or less correctly. And now here we are with Vlog overexposed by 3 stops. And what's important is to see how much we can recover from this. And through using a combination of primaries and curves, I have tried to recover it as much as I can. And you can see it still doesn't look great here. Again, let's compare it to the original. That's what it should look like exposed correctly. So this is using regular Vlog, kind of what the GH5 was able to do. So now let's take a look at the dynamic range boost. So here it is, DR Boost exposed correctly. And now DR Boost exposed 3 stops over, and take a look at how well it recovers. So bringing those highlights down are totally salvageable. There's a lot of detail left over here if you look at the waveform. And again, let's compare it to that regular Vlog. Like, there's just nothing there. There is nothing to be saved in the highlights. Tons of data left in the DR Boost. And I thought this would be useful to compare to the Canon R5. So this is 8K raw, regular exposure, correct exposure. If we look at 3 stops over, it's not great, a little blown out. And now we recover it, and that's how much you can recover. So this is 3 stops over recovered on the R5, 8K raw, 3 stops over recovered with DR Boost on the GH6, and 3 stops over recovered with regular Vlog. Huge difference. I will be using DR Boost as often as I can. By the way, if you're wondering why I love Vlog so much, this is shot in the Cine D2, which is, their kind of full contrast. Look at the attempt to recover anything in here. Like, it falls apart really quick. I can't do a lot, no matter which tools I use to recover those highlights. And this is barely overexposed, only 1 stop. If I go to 3 stops overexposed, try to recover anything there, there's absolutely no hope. It is completely clipped. Another great thing for anybody shooting in log like I do is that Panasonic is now using their Vlog rather than Vlog L, which was in the previous GH5. And this just means you now have that full tone curve from their more professional bodies. A quick note, in my first tests, I had some crazy artifacts that seemed to have been fixed by a firmware update. I haven't experienced it since, but I should let you know that that did happen. Obviously, the GH6 isn't really targeted at high ISO performance, but it did really well. 800, 1600, 2000 for DR Boost, all of it looked really clean. Don't go to the super high ISOs because it's gonna fall apart, but most normal use looked great. Not having shot Panasonic's Micro Four Thirds systems before, I'd heard about their focus issues, but I hadn't confronted them myself. This is still using the contrast-based system that the GH5 was, but it is updated. So if you're hoping for a revolution, it's not here. We don't have the same phase-based system that we've come to enjoy on Canon and Sony cameras. I wish it was better. It's not. This is a real compromise if you're choosing the GH6 over some other cameras. Something I've heard hyped up over the years is the built-in image stabilization on Panasonic cameras. So the IBIS combined with the lens stabilization is supposed to be great. Skiing is an ultimate test of any stabilization system, and so far the best way to do it I found is the iPhone. We've tried gimbals and third-party stabilization hardware. Still none of them beat the phone, so let's see how the GH6 holds up. Now, looking at the two, the iPhone clearly wins. It is more stable and it has a more natural look to it. The big problems with the GH6 appear when it needs to do large corrections. This is a really hard stress test for any camera, so I'm not too surprised that it wasn't perfect. It still did a passable job. Like I could use this if I was a little more careful, but I guess I hoped it could be a little bit more. Now for a bonus, remember how excited I was about that open gate? Well, it also means that you have some flexibility in terms of anamorphic. So obviously I shot an anamorphic test. This is using the Vazen 28mm. It's f2.2 when it's wide open, and it's a 1.8 squeeze or D-squeeze. Anybody who has ever shot anamorphic is probably half doing it to get these insane flares that you can get. They look great. And a reason that you would want to do this with the lens instead of in post is that they actually interact with reality. I mean, you could always add a flare around a bright subject, but you can see in this sample here, like it is overlapping the 3D world. So the flare from the backlight is behind me, and then from the phone light is in front of me, and it looks really nice. I like flares. Shooting with this was super fun. So even if you don't need it on a regular basis, if you pick up a GH6, I highly recommend rent one of these and just try it. It's awesome. To find out more about the GH6, you're gonna have to listen to the podcast. We're gonna go way more in depth. And also remember to click that link in the description below to find out more about PPA memberships. Thanks for watching, guys. See you next week.